Hi everybody. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to finish a cozy knit carrot. So these are from the Cozy Spring Vibes pattern bundle. If you're working on one of these, the step that I'm at is basically finish my last round and I'm ready to cast off, and then I'm ready to stuff and close it up. So I'm going to show you guys how I would go about doing that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my yarn from the ball and leave just a little bit of a tail so that I can stitch that end up. All right, and then I already have the end here from where I cast on my project. So the cast on is going to end up being the top of the carrot, and then where you're casting off will be the point or the tip of the carrot. So I'm going to use my yarn needle here, and I'm just going to run this tail through each loop as I take it off of the needles. So right off. And this one that I'm working with is the medium size. So I'm off the needles and then I'm just gonna pull nice and tight. I like to go back through each loop one time. That's just how I prefer to do it, just to make sure that it's nice and secure. So I'm going to go back through each of those loops one more time. And I think it just kind of helps bring it together and look, you know, a little bit smoother as well. So I'm going to go back through all those loops, pull it nice and tight. And then I'm going to just hide my yarn tail. So this can be like right through the middle of the top, or you can just sort of weave it into the body of the carrot, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to send that tail through, and then that'll just sort of get hidden inside when I stuff it. So I'm going to cut this little bit here, and then I'm going to take my stitch marker off because I don't need that anymore. I like to use these stitch markers that have the claw clasp to keep track of my rounds. Like once I get to a decrease round, I'll like put the marker on so I can remember, you know, like as I'm making my way through. So that's sort of how I use those. But all right, so I've got the point of my carrot all stitched up, and so I'm going to do the same thing to sort of close up the top here by threading this tail through all of the loops. Okay, I will stuff this too before I close it completely, but I like to just go through and have this ready to go. So I'm using my yarn tail and I'm just gonna go through each of these loops, and I just kind of insert my yarn needle and swirl it through each loop as I go around, and I'm not pulling anything tight yet because I don't want it to be completely closed up, but I like to have it ready to go, ready to cinch closed. Okay, last couple of little loops, and then I like to go back through like the first two just to secure it. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that opening a little bit so that I can stuff it. All right, so I'm gonna use some polyfill, but you can use yarn scraps or whatever you've got. Fabric scraps, shredded pieces of paper, Easter basket filler, whatever you've got. So I'm just going to, I like to get a good amount of the stuffing towards the tip of the carrot first. And you want to avoid overstuffing here. You shouldn't be able to see the stuffing through your stitches. If you can, then I would take a little bit out. All right, and then I'll kind of like just work the project through like a little bit to make it, you know, have the shape that I want. I like to add a little bit of stuffing at a time. I think that this just helps to make it as smooth as possible and not look, you know, lumpy. And then, you know, as you're going through, you can always add a little bit more if you need it, but it's a little harder to take it out as you're working on it. So again, I'm just kind of like scrunching the carrot a little bit as I go, so it has the shape I want. And once I get to the top, I'll sort of just like use my finger to press it all down And I kind of like will put my finger into the middle of the stuffing and kind of like swirl it around a little bit, just to like sort of, again, evenly distribute that stuffing. And then I'll start to cinch it closed a little bit and see if I have enough. Honestly, less is more with this because it'll just make it look a little bit neater and smoother. You don't necessarily need it to be, you know, really, really stuffed tight. All right, so there's my carrot. And then I'm going to close the top here. Make sure my stuffing is in there. Really just want enough stuffing to hold that shape. As you can see, I like to squish mine. I give it a lot of attention when I'm stuffing it. I do the same thing with my pumpkins and the eggs and the trees and all of that. So at this point, I'm going to close this completely. And I don't know if you guys saw my video here, but I have found that it's easier to close the top, especially if you have like several, you know, loops, by going back through every other stitch. So I'm going to go back around, and this just makes it close up like tighter and neater on the top. So I'm going around every other stitch all the way around. Hello. And then once I get all the way back, there we go. Once I get back to the beginning, I'll go back through that first loop one more time. There's really no wrong way to do this. There's just whatever works best for you. Okay, so there's my top. And then I'm gonna hide that yarn tail. And I'm gonna go through the middle this time. So I'm gonna go back through the middle of the top of the carrot and out through the side, pull it nice and tight. And I'm gonna show you guys how I get these to go from a little bit wonky to looking a little bit nicer too. Cut that tail. Also, just real life, I'm doing this video tutorial while the girls are napping, so hoping to get finished before they wake up. Okay, so see how the top has just got like these bumps? It's not as even as I want. I like to take some really sharp scissors. You could also use your yarn needle, and I'm just gonna find any like stitches or bits that are bumping out. And I'm going to use my scissors and just kind of press them back in. And then continue shaping it a little bit. Kind of roll it in your hands like you would if you were, you know, sculpting clay or something like that. Okay, and then if you have any other stitches, like maybe down here where it's a little bit bumpy, it's kind of hard to see this color yarn here with the sun, but I'll take my scissors and I'll do the same thing. So on the top here, I'll just push some of these are the loops that I cast off. So I'm just kind of pushing them back into the center so that that yarn is a little bit like smoother and cleaner looking. I don't know if you guys can see that. This yarn color isn't like picking up on the camera because it's so dark. Okay, so here's my purple carrot, all finished and nice and smooth. All right. And then what I'm going to do next is add that greenery to the top. And so what I did here, there's again other ways I'm sure that you could do this, but what I did was I cut some strips of green yarn. This is just Rasta. I think the color is lettuce. This is actually glazed carrot, and this is lotus, I believe. So I cut 5 strands, and I just kind of made them the length that I want, folded in half. So once I attach them, they're going to be that long. I can always trim them if they're too long. All right. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your yarn needle again and your little green strips. And what I did is I just found spots in the top of my carrot to weave that yarn through. So I'm going to go through one of these loops up here in the top on one side and then another one on the other side. I don't know if you can see that. And now my cat's meowing. So I'm just going to loop that through, and it's going to look something like this. So when I'm done, I'm gonna gather these all up and then tie them together. Okay, so I'm gonna do that again in another spot. The cat has been very vocal lately, so if you hear meowing in the background, that's her. You know, she just wants to be part of the video. And no babies are awake yet, so that's good. All right, so I'm gonna work my way around. You can do as many of these as you want. I have 5 here, but maybe I'll just do 4. I feel like 4 is a good even number. Go through those loops. Again, you could go through the middle of the top of the carrot. You don't have to do it this way. This is just, I don't know, my brain, this is the way it made sense to my brain, was to loop them through and then gather them all up. All right, let's do one more, and I'll save this last one is gonna be to tie them together. So let's find a spot that makes sense. We'll go through here, loop, kind of going under this yarn to hide that a little bit. Again, no set rules here. Just do what works for you. Okay. So I'm gonna make sure these are even. Now I'm gonna gather them all up. Yes, Phoebe, we know you want to be part of the video too, huh? So I'm going to gather them all up, and then what I like about this is it looks like they're actually coming out of the carrot if you do it this way. All right, so I'll gather those up, and then I'm just going to use this other piece here, and you could certainly just leave them like that, I guess, if you really wanted to, but I think having a piece tied around just kind of helps make it look a little bit neater, and it doesn't look as realistic this way, but that's okay. So I'm gonna just tie this. She's like, hey, where's my carrots? All right, I'm gonna tie it. I'm gonna just do a double knot because I want it to be nice and secure. Okay, and then I'm gonna take those pieces that I just tied. This would probably work better if you have a little bit of a longer piece, but since I had that extra, I'm just going with it. So I'm gonna just weave those ends in, that green end. I'm just gonna pull it through. Hello, if it goes. There we go. So I'm gonna pull that piece. And then I like to use this same like trick if I have like little pieces sticking out or fuzz sticking out or whatever, of using the yarn needle. So again, I'm gonna wrap this around, and you could just leave those if you wanted to, I suppose, just to be like more fluff for the top of your carrot. But I'm just gonna actually use my scissors and push this down in here. We're using all kinds of crazy methods here today. But you know what? Whatever works. You know, as soon as the babies play with this, I'm sure it's gonna come out, but it's hidden. If yours are just for decoration, then, you know, do whatever works for you. Okay, so here's the top. All right, and then I'm just gonna give it a little bit more zhuzhing and fluffing and shaping, and I'm going to cut. I can leave those uneven, or I can cut them. I'm gonna actually cut mine and just trim them a little bit so they're a little bit more even. And that's it. And you have your cozy little carrots. So I hope you guys like this video. Hopefully you guys are enjoying making your cozy spring vibes. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message, and happy knitting.